I have to admit, when I first saw the topic for today, I had this momentary flashback to high school calculus. The term on the table is the identity monoid.
It does sound a bit like a covert military operation or maybe a particularly obscure physics theory.
Right, the identity monoid. It just sounds heavy, imposing. But the deeper I looked into the source material you sent over, the more I realized that this scary-sounding concept is actually about, well, relaxation.
That is certainly one way to frame it.
It's the mathematical art of doing absolutely nothing, but, doing it with extreme precision.
I would say it's more about the utility of doing nothing. It's about why nothingness is actually a structural requirement for things to work properly.
To get to the bottom of this, we are looking at a very specific, and I have to say, very charming corner of the internet. We're analyzing a blog post from qianmeng.org, specifically an entry called Notes on Haskell Programming, Part 36, posted on January 20th, 2026.
And we should probably pause on that title for a second. Part 36. This isn't just a flash-in-the-pan tutorial. This is a long-term documentation project.
Exactly. The author, Ang, refers to themselves as an old software plumber. And I love that title. It feels so tactile. It suggests someone who isn't up in the clouds dreaming of algorithms, but someone down in the basement with a wrench, making sure the data doesn't leak.
It's a mindset. A plumber cares about flow, stability, and avoiding messes. And that mindset is crucial for understanding why on earth we're talking about monoids today.
So here's the plan. We are going to dissect a tiny snippet of code from Ang's blog. It's written in Haskell, which is a programming language famous for being, well, difficult, rigorous, and incredibly mathematical.
It has a reputation.
It does. And we're going to figure out what this idiom function is, why it's better than just leaving things blank, and how it connects to, of all things, fish tanks.
Fish tanks.
Yes. Because as I was stalking the rest of the blog, which I highly recommend, by the way, I noticed Ang doesn't just write about code. The tags on the site are just wild. Notes on fish keeping, notes on gardening, notes on photography.
It is an eclectic mix. But if you look closely, they're all systems.
Right. There are these detailed notes on zebra cichlids and fighting blackbeard algae right next to notes on Haskell compiler flags.
And that is not a coincidence. Whether you are balancing the pH levels in a tank for cichlids or balancing types in a Haskell program, you are managing an environment. You are looking for stability.
So let's look at the digital tank Ang is building here. The post focuses on a snippet for a CLI application. A command line interface, basically a program you run in a terminal.
Specifically, it's using a library called optparse-applicative.
Which is a mouthful.
It is. But think of it as a toolkit for building those help menus you see when you run a command. When you type a command and add help. This library builds that whole structure.
Okay. So Ang provides a code block. It's short, maybe 10 lines. We have a parser, a main function. But the spotlight is really on lines 9 and 10.
Correct. Line 9 defines a variable. It says modifier equals a DM.
And then the line 10 uses it, ops info parser modifier.
So the info function is the machine. It builds the information packet for the program. It requires two things. A parser, which understands the arguments, and a modifier, which, changes the settings.
And Ang has provided idim as the modifier, but here's the kicker. The post explicitly says idim is a neutral value that performs no action.
It does absolutely nothing.
So my initial reaction was, why bother? If I'm ordering a coffee, I don't say, I'd like a latte with a shot of vanilla and a shot of nothing. I just don't mention the nothing. Why does the code need to explicitly state insert nothing here?
That is the million-dollar question. And to answer it, we have to respect the plumber aspect of our author. If you have a pipe fitting that has 3 openings, you can't just leave one open to the air. You have to cap it.
Otherwise, water goes everywhere.
Exactly. Haskell is a very strict language. It's like a building code inspector that follows you around. The info function on line 10 has a rigid structure. It demands a modifier. It says, you must give me a configuration for the footer or the header.
And if you don't have a footer,
you can't just give it empty air. You have to give it a specific kind of nothing. That is what ED is.
Okay, this brings us back to the scary name, IDM, which stands for identity monoid.
Yes. And we need to break those two words apart because they mean different things. Let's start with identity.
In the math world, identity is the value that doesn't change anything, right?
Basically. But it depends entirely on what you are doing. This is where people get tripped up.
Give me an example.
Okay, let's look at addition. If you want to add something to the number 5, but keep the result as 5, what do you add?
0.
Right. So 0 is the identity for addition, But what if we are doing multiplication? If I have 5 and I want to multiply it by something to keep it 5.
Oh, if I multiply by 0, I get 0.
Yeah.
So it has to be 1.
Exactly. This is a crucial distinction. The identity changes based on the context. For addition, it's 0. For multiplication, it's 1.
And for text, the post mentions strings.
If you have the string hello and you want to combine it with something to keep it hello.
You combine it with an empty string.
Yeah.
Just quote, quote.
Precisely. So EZerum is the specific identity value for this configuration library. It knows that it is operating in the context of modifying options, and it acts as the neutral element there.
So it's the 0 of the settings world.
Yes. But that's only half the story. Yeah. That explains the identity part. The monoid part is actually the more interesting piece of the puzzle.
I was hoping we'd get to the monoid. It sounds like a robot villain. The monoids are attacking.
A monoid is actually a pair of things. It's a set of values like all the numbers or all the possible text strings and a rule for how to smash two of them together.
Smashing them together.
In math terms, it's a binary operation. But yeah, think of it as combining. To have a monoid, you need to be able to take two things and turn them into one thing.
Okay, like 5 plus 3 becomes 8. Two numbers become one number.
Right, or hello combined with world becomes hello world. Two strings become one string.
So how does this apply to Ang's code? We are talking about configuration settings.
Think about what a configuration is. You might have one setting that says add a header. You might have another setting that says add a footer, and a third that says make the help text verbose.
And you want to apply all of them.
Exactly. You want to smash them together into one big configuration ball. Optparse-applicative, the library Ang is using, is designed as a monoid. It knows how to combine header setting plus footer setting into a single valid instruction.
I see. So the monoid is the rule book that says, here is how we merge these settings.
Yes. And here is why idiom is so magical. The rule of a monoid is that the identity element can be smashed anywhere, and it changes nothing. You can have header plus footer plus idiom, and the result is just header plus footer.
It effectively disappears during the smashing process?
It disappears from the result, but, and this is critical, it was there to participate in the process.
That distinction feels important.
It is huge. Imagine you are writing a script that generates these settings dynamically. Maybe sometimes you need a footer, sometimes you don't. You need a safe default to start with. You start with idiom. Then, if the user wants a footer, you add the footer to idiom. If they don't, you add nothing.
And because idiom is a valid monoidive, the math still works. You don't have to write an if-else statement checking if the value exists or not.
Exactly. You treat it just like any other value.
This sounds a lot safer than the alternative. I know enough about programming to know that null is. It's a dirty word.
Oh, absolutely. Sir Tony Hoare, the computer scientist who invented the null reference, calls it his billion-dollar mistake.
Why? What makes null so much worse than idiom? They both mean nothing, don't they?
Not at all. And this is where the software plumber analogy really shines. Imagine you have a pipe system.
Yep.
Idiom is an empty pipe. Air flows through it, water flows through it, it connects to other pipes perfectly. It just happens to be empty right now.
Okay.
Null is a missing section of pipe. If you try to pump water through idiom, it flows. If you try to pump water through null, it sprays all over the basement floor and the program crashes.
That is a visceral image.
In code, if you try to combine header with null, most languages will scream at you. You get a null pointer exception, the program dies. But if you combine header with in, the program politely hands you back the header.
So idiom is a safe nothing. It plays by the rules.
It respects the structure. It's a polite guest at the dinner party. Null is a ghost that doesn't exist, and when you try to talk to it, you just fall over.
I'm looking at the blog post again, and Ang writes, in a later post, we'll explore how to replace this identity element with actual modifiers.
Right.
It strikes me that using idiom is almost like priming a canvas. A painter doesn't just start painting on raw wood. They put down a layer of gesso, a white base layer. It's nothing in terms of the final image, but it's something in terms of the structure.
That is a great analogy. It's a blank state, not an absent state. And for a software plumber like Ang, that distinction is everything.
Let's go back to the fish for a second.
The zebra cichlids.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the contrast here. Ang is meticulously documenting the chaotic biological systems of an aquarium. Notes on treating blackbeard algae.
Which is a nightmare to get rid of, by the way.
I bet. And then on the same blog, dealing with the rigid mathematical perfection of Haskell monoids.
It seems like a paradox, doesn't it? One is messy, one is pristine.
But maybe the monoids is the way you deal with the mess.
Go on.
Well, if you're building a system, whether it's a filter for a fish tank or a CLI for a user, you can't predict everything that's going to happen. You don't know if the user will want a header. You don't know if the algae will spike.
Sure.
So you build a structure that can handle zero change gracefully. You build a filter system that works even if there's no algae. You build a code structure that works even if there are no extra modifiers.
That is deeply insightful. The admin nav allows the system to be consistent regardless of the input. It means you don't have to rebuild the plumbing every time the situation changes. The pipes stay the same, only what flows through them changes.
It's modularity.
It is. And notice how Ang talks about it. Notes on. It's very scientific. Observation, hypothesis, implementation, whether it is adjusting the CO2 in the planted tank or adjusting the parser in the code.
And EDM acts as this perfect placeholder. It holds the space open for future complexity.
Holding space is exactly the right phrase. In architecture, you sometimes build a void into a building, not because you forgot a room, but because the structure needs that space for airflow, or for light, or for future expansion.
Or for the plumbing.
Or for the plumbing. IDEM is that intentional void. It's not an error, it's a design choice.
It's funny, we started the deep dive thinking identity monoid sounded like some terrifying physics concept, but now it feels comfortable, it feels reliable.
That's the beauty of higher-level math in Haskell. It uses these scary names for very simple, very human concepts. Make sure things combine safely. Make sure you have a safe starting point.
It's just safety first for data, essentially.
Yeah.
And for a developer like Ang, who is clearly juggling a lot of different interests, gardening, photography, coding having tools that are low maintenance is key. You don't want your code to be needy.
You don't want your code to act like the blackbeard algae.
You want your code to be the tank glass, solid, invisible, just holding everything together.
I want to circle back to the code snippet one last time. Ops, info parser modifier.
Yes.
We've established that EDM fills the modifier slot. But what happens when Ang actually does want to add something? How does the code change?
That's the elegance of it. The structure on line 10 ops, info parser modifier, never has to change.
Never.
Never. Right now, modifier is defined as idem. Tomorrow, Ang can change line 9 to define modifier as header my cool app, or header app footer version 1. Line 10 stays exactly the same.
Because the info function just sees a monoid. It doesn't care if it's an empty monoid or a pure monoid.
Basically, if the plumbing is installed, you're just changing the fixture.
This is why people get obsessed with Haskell, isn't it? It is. It feels like you've solved the problem once and for all. You aren't hacking together a solution. You've discovered the correct way the universe wants to organize information.
Even if that universe includes zebra cichlids.
Especially then.
So, drawing this out to a broader lesson for our listeners who might not be writing Haskell code today, but are probably building systems in their own lives.
I think the lesson is about the value of the neutral element.
In what sense?
We live in a culture that pushes for constant additive modification. If you're in a meeting, you feel you have to speak to add value. If you're working on a project, you feel you have to add a feature.
The urge to tweak, to modify.
Right. We are terrified of idiom. We think if we aren't adding a header or a footer, we aren't doing our job.
But the code tells us that doing nothing is a valid state.
Not just a valid state, a necessary one. Sometimes, the most robust thing you can do for a team or a project or a relationship is to be the identity monoid. To be present, to be compatible, to allow the process to flow through you, but to consciously choose not to alter the outcome.
To be the empty pipe that lets the water get where it needs to go, rather than the blockage that tries to redirect it.
Or the leak that crashes the system.
I like that. It's active neutrality. You're there. You're part of the equation. Remember, 5 plus 0 involves the 0. The 0 is doing work. It's stabilizing the 5.
Exactly. It validates the operation without distorting the result.
I'm going to try that. Sorry, I can't take on that task. I'm currently operating as an identity monoid.
I mean, try it.
Yeah.
But maybe explain the math first, or your boss might think you're just napping.
Fair point. But seriously, checking out kianmeng.org is worth it. It's a reminder that expertise isn't just about knowing the big, flashy answers. It's about the daily grind of logging notes, fixing leaks, and understanding the small, invisible tools that keep the whole thing standing.
And honestly, the notes on fish keeping are just as rigorous as the Haskell notes. I learned a lot about water flow rates.
There you go. Systems are systems.
Whether they are wet or digital.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final visual. We talked about IDEM as the safe nothing, the empty floor versus the hole in the floor.
Right.
As you go through your week, look for the holes in the floor in your own workflows. Where are the places where a lack of input causes a crash? Where does a missing email chain cause panic?
And how could you install an identity monoid there? A default, safe, neutral response that keeps the system running even when the inputs are missing.
Turn your nulls into idioms.
That's a bumper sticker waiting to happen.
We'll put it on the merch store. Thanks for diving deep with us into the abstract world of doing nothing.
My pleasure.
Keep your modifiers ready, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.